All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Countless Vlogcast. I'm your host, Justin Rich. My guest today is author CJ Aaron, first time author, guys. Welcome in. He's the author. So, guys, hope you enjoy the show, and I'll bring you right in. All right. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. How are you today?
So, tell us a little about yourself.
So you introduced me as an author. So I'm an author from. I originally grew up over in up in New England. I moved down here to steamy Houston, Texas, about 6 years ago. So I'm an author primarily of started out in the fantasy genre, and that's where I'm sticking right now.
Great. So you're a new author. When did you start writing seriously, professionally?
So I took a bit of a creative track to get to writing. My my artistic expression growing up was primarily music, and as I got a little bit older, I started doing a lot of graphic design and things like that. My first real venture into writing was copywriting for commercial radio advertising. I first started the journey in fantasy writing in 2018, so just a couple years in now.
So with your genre, how did you discover that one fall into place with that genre? Like, what made you decide to write in that genre particularly?
So I've always been a huge fantasy fan. I was an avid reader primarily as a kid and took a little bit of a hiatus growing up. I really got back into it and dove into it full force. I mean, to the point of a couple hundred books a year I was reading, and it was primarily all fantasy. I'm a bit of a sucker for the coming of age fantasy stories, so that's kind of where I tended to read. So just write about what I love.
Great. So let's talk about the recent book you published. What was the process behind that too, and what inspired that?
So the first book I published is called it's the Catalyst series. Book one is called The Tribute at the Gates. It actually came out last Tuesday. Aethon Books published it, so it's been going very well so far. You know, it was I just sat down when I first started to decide to write. I sat down and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to write and how I wanted to write. And I kind of took two different ideas, one more comical, and then one more serious. Catalyst Tribute at the Gates. The Tribute at the Gates is a little bit on the darker side. So I sat down with both of those, and this is the one that I really fell in love with, and this is where we are today. So
great. So there's like a million fantasy authors out there too, and what makes you different? Like without being like too humble, what makes you like different and unique in terms compared to other authors?
It's the dreaded question. So I don't know. Everybody's got their own story to tell. Everybody's got their own fresh, different perspective on things. I guess I would probably have to go the origin story, for lack of a better sense in putting it. So basically, in the midst of reading, as much as I was reading, I kind of hit a wall where I couldn't find books I wanted to read. And I remember being laid up in bed with a fever from one of the bugs the kids brought home from school, and just literally thinking, I'm going to write a book. And that's where we are today. I sat down, I went all in with it. I never honestly anticipated in the beginning getting where we are today, but I fell in love with it, couldn't stop writing, and it's been the adventure so far. So
that's great, man.
It wasn't a radioactive bug that bit me, a different bug got me started.
I like those simple stories, man. The simple journeys are the best ones, man. You never know where you're gonna go with that too. So we're talking a little bit before this interview about publishing. So what made you decide to go from the publisher, like the old school route of publishing, to versus the new school route of self-publishing?
So I had started, so I released A Tribute at the Gates originally in 2019, or excuse me, the end of 2018, I'm sorry. It was only up for a couple months when I ended up going on with Aethon Books, and we pulled it down, fixed it up quite a bit, and it's back bigger and better than ever. So it's been out since last Tuesday.
Okay, congratulations on that too. So who are some of your influences in terms of fantasy authors and authors in general that inspire your writing?
So as a kid growing up, I was an avid reader of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Honestly, was my main influence growing up. I've probably read specifically the Mars series. Probably read each one of those a dozen times. A lot of the influence today comes from a lot of the newer authors that I've fallen in love with. Couple in particular that were kind of my sounding boards when I was first working my way through this. I was more of a reader still at that point than a writer, but I bounced ideas off them. AC Cobble, Stevie Collier, Daniel Hilton were the three specifically that, I mean, they put up with my probably nonsense questions, and they really helped. They're really inspirational in getting me going, keeping me motivated, and, you know, getting me where I am today. So
Great. So let's talk about the creative process a little bit too, in terms of like pen to paper to like publishing too. So what's like your process too? Are you like more like a planner or like a pantser, or are you like write for a couple hours? Like, what's your process like?
So the process I kind of fell into, and it's still obviously evolving process. It's always kind of the best made plans, laid plans of mice and men kind of deal. So I try to outline as best I can. You know, I kind of know where the book's going to end. I know where it's going to start, and then the key points and the key plot lines and all the events a lot of the events that fall in there. I'll put those down in an outline and then start from point A and try to get to point B without interruption. I like to write in chronological order instead of jumping around, you know, section to section. Kind of keeps me motivated for the sections I really want to write in a sense sometimes when you get bogged down with hitting a rut or whatnot. But I try to outline as best I can. But like I said, a lot of the stuff I'd outlined in the original versions didn't end up happening, changed a bit. So
Great. So in this time of like quarantine and like being home all this time too, has it affected your creativity too, in positive way or negative way?
it's honestly been, you know, going into quarantine, I thought, oh, great, I've got tons of free time. I'll be able to write all day long, you know, things like that. But it's taken a bit of a toll, honestly. It's been, with everything going on and all the distractions and all the concerns, it's honestly been a little bit hard to keep writing at the rate I was writing before. So still write a little bit every day, but it's not, unfortunately, expected to have a few novels done in this span of time. But it didn't work out that way, and that's just such is life.
Yep, such is life. So in terms of your audience, do you have audience in mind now with like being a recent author and like a new author, or like are you still working on finding an audience?
So when I first started down, I mean, the audience I was targeting when I first sat down, put pen to paper, was just fantasy. And I really didn't have a specific audience. Like I said before, I've always been a big fan of the coming of age stories. Tribute at the Gates fits nicely into the young adult category. So that's where we are now. We'll see what happens in the next project. But this, I didn't really start with a, you know, more specific genre in mind, or target audience, I should say.
So as writers, we always have in mind ourselves is like when they're writing from our perspective too. But what do you want people to take away from the book, from the people's perspective?
So Tribute at the Gates specifically, the main theme I want people to take out away is really just hope. It's a bit of a darker tale. You know, he deals with a lot of the dredges of humanity and a lot of dark themes in there and a lot of pretty awful things. So you know, just take away that there's hope even when the darkness seems overpowering.
Okay, great. So if you could give advice to authors out there, just since you're a beginning author too out there, like younger authors out there and people just beginning like yourself, if you give it any advice like, from the process of writing to publishing to editing, that'd be great.
So I had asked that question to an author back when I was getting started. I asked that exact question too, and the word stuck with me. And what he told me was just to write every day. So whether it's a few hundred words or a few thousand words, just write every day. it's kind of what I've tried to live by. You know, some days are better than others. Some days are a lot more words. Some days are a lot less. But you know, as long as I keep writing it, you know, something's positive happened that day. So.
That's awesome. So what are some of your present goals too? It doesn't have to be like specifically writing too, in terms of like maybe marketing or like finding audience or expanding out there. Like what are some of your goals, would you say?
So since I'm so new with this still, I mean, my goal is still, the overpowering goal is still to learn. You know, I've barely touched on this whole adventure of writing. Obviously finishing this series out is a huge goal. That's the number one. Well underway with the final book in the Catalyst series. So, but other than that, I mean, I've been trying to absorb as much knowledge from as many different sources and as many different other authors and everything that I can. Just, you know, further advancing and evolving the writing and just going from there.
So, besides fantasy, is there any other genre you'd like to expand into, like in the future, or like anything like fantasy wise you'd like to write about in the future?
I'd like to look into some. I mean, growing up as an avid Edgar Rice Burroughs fan, science fiction is always a big part of it too. So, got some projects that I've been toying around with in that genre, but we'll try to focus on this one first right now, and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Great. So, where can people find you at too, in terms of social media to websites?
So cjaaron.com. I am available there. CJ Aaron. I've also got a Facebook page, so you can find me there. And then yeah, that's it right now. Toyed around with Instagram and Twitter yet, but honestly, I haven't gotten so involved in those yet. The pages are started, but I haven't filled them up much.
Well, thank you for coming on, CJ. It's been great. So,
thank you.
I like to end these with like a positive message from you to the audience and future audience out there, like readers out there, and like to share your first interview.
No, I really appreciate it. This is a nerve-wracking first interview, but thank you for being kind to me. Now it's just keep reading, whatever it is. You know, find what you love and keep reading it. Do what you love. That's really just
all right.
Have fun doing it. That's all that matters. If not having fun, I guess it's not really worth doing.
Well, thank you for coming on for your first time. You did great. So I wish you luck in your future adventures too. When people can find you on Facebook, Instagram, you have a website too, all under the same name. The website is cjaaron.com. So guys, make sure you guys follow him and find his book for the Catalyst Tribute. Guys, make sure you support. Also, subscribe to the Catalyst Vlogcast. You can watch this again on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, CJ, for coming on and sharing your story.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.